Hey, how's it going guys? My name is Aylwood and today we're taking a look at South Park The Stick of Truth. An absolute must play considered by many, which personally I've never played until now, and to answer the ultimate question, is it worth your time? So, The Stick of Truth is a single-player, comedy, action-adventure, turn-based RPG. Set in the beloved town of South Park, of course, you take on the role of the new kid whose presence was foretold by the cosmos. You'll be making friends with some very familiar faces, working directly for the Wizard King Cartman, all while enjoying the very unique fun-style turn-based system this game has to offer. So if you're at all familiar with the South Park series, you would have undoubtedly noticed that this game's aesthetic design is based completely on the TV show. And when I say completely, I mean practically every single detail, from familiar building layouts to simple object textures to the tiniest character detail. So don't expect my aesthetic description to be as long as usual. You may as well consider yourself watching an extended episode as you play, it's that spot on. There are some exceptions of course, like certain CGI scenes, and of course the game's UI and combat. Everything else though is pretty much identical. Lighting and shadow effects are practically non-existent, textures and detail are extremely simple yet effective, and character designs are like for like from the series. The UI is pretty non-existent while exploring, which I like. Screens like shops, your equipment and map are all very simple, easy to navigate and suit the art style of the series very well. Level layouts are of course two-dimensional as you would expect, with the addition of moving towards and away from the camera instead of just your standard left and right, which if I'm honest I did not expect. Character and enemy designs are, as mentioned, practically identical to the series. You obviously have an assortment of brutal attacks, out-of-the-box statuses and unusual enemies that are probably not in the actual series, but then again who knows, I may be wrong. Overall a very familiar aesthetic design that perfectly captures the heart and soul of the renowned series.
Not nice.
The OSTs in Stick of Truth are not at all what I was expecting, if I'm honest. When I thought South Park soundtracks, I definitely didn't expect fully orchestrated, somewhat operatic tracks with a very distinct fantasy feel to them. Each track is very distinct, simple and sometimes humorous. They manage to maintain a consistent, not too serious yet not too lighthearted feel throughout your gaming experience, while also creating a quite crisp, memorable sound quality as well. Not to mention some upbeat battle soundtracks thrown into the mix too. I was also shocked to see a whopping 80 plus soundtracks in the entire game, which wow, was definitely a pleasant surprise. Very good job, I have to say. Everything else sound related is very good quality. All the familiar voice actors and episode sound effects have of course returned, with the addition of new sounds for the many different abilities, new environments and special characters. I especially like the to the point jingles when completing quests, loading save data and navigating menus. Overall a shockingly high soundtrack quality that I'm sure took many South Park fans by complete surprise. Now for the gameplay. So the Stick of Truth does have a few difficulty options to choose from during gameplay. You can choose between casual, normal and hardcore mode. Similar to Oblivion, you can change your chosen difficulty at any time through the start menu. Doing so causes no repercussions to your gameplay, and luckily there are no difficulty specific achievements, so you're free to do what you like. The story of the game starts off quite innocently, to be fair. As mentioned, you play as the new kid in town since your parents have decided to relocate to South Park. You happen upon your next door neighbor Butters, who appears to be playing a fantasy RPG in real life. Well, in the fictional South Park universe that is. You save him from some random kid, he takes you to the Wizard King Cartman, and thus your Stick of Truth adventure begins. Fortunately, the lore does develop pretty well the further you get, with a few plot twists, a memorable protagonist, and decent character development thrown into the mix. I won't elaborate further of course, as I may begin to enter spoiler territory. When you first start the game, you're shown a very to the point intro cutscene that introduces you to the the core concept of the game. You're then brought to an impressively wide selection of customizations you can make to your playable character. I was quite surprised with the amount of options available, especially with the addition of primary and secondary colour clothing options. Keep in mind though, as you'll be wearing armour for about 98% of your entire playthrough, try not to waste too much time customizing your clothing. So once you're done with the cutscene and character creation, you take control of the new kid and play. If you're familiar with any kind of turn-based fantasy game, you'll take to this game's concept very quickly. As mentioned, the open world is 2D based with the addition of a towards and away from the camera direction of travel, so some would argue it's a 2.5D game. Your movement controls are exactly as you'd expect regardless of your input device. The combat is also just as simple. Abilities, spells and items are all used by simply selecting whichever command you want on your turn. So literally anyone can play this game even if you're a complete amateur. The only thing you really need to worry about is this game's most unique combat asset, real-time inputs. Real-time inputs are basically actions made by you directly that are optional when certain criteria is met. Examples of this are when you're about to take damage, you can perfectly time a block that greatly reduces the damage taken. Certain abilities require perfectly timed inputs that maximize damage dealt, and other attacks can require a button to be spammed quickly. There are likely other examples I've not mentioned, but you get the idea. As with your more common turn-based RPG, you will see the return of familiar concepts like various damage types, status effects, and a not so common armor system, all of which gets explained considerably well by Cartman in a short tutorial event just after you start the game. A few other important points to mention: again, when meeting Cartman for the first time, you can choose between one of 4 classes that you'll be committed to for the entire playthrough. You eventually recruit party members that you can choose from at any time out of combat that come with various in and out of combat advantages. Keep in mind though, the maximum party size is only 2. There isn't any kind of timer during the turn-based combat, so by all means take your sweet time. The team that goes first is determined by who attacked who when out of combat, unless during a boss fight, in which case you normally go first. You have access to summons which are previously helped characters from the series that will come to your aid once a day. Magic are powerful attacks that involve your character's bowels in some way, which the game recommends using against enemies who are channeling attacks. All abilities cost PP, all magic costs mana. When leaving combat, your HP and PP are fully restored, and probably the most important combat tip, when using items, they don't use up your turn, which means you can technically use an item every single turn with no penalty, so be sure to use them. Other non-combat related mechanics include the ability to equip various weapons and armor that come with status effects, armor amounts, and plenty of passives to help you in combat. Both weapons and armor items can be upgraded in the form of weapon strap-ons and armor patches that provide additional passives to improve your combat efficiency. When out of combat, you can use a ranged weapon to interact with the world around you. You can use your magic on certain objects for very interesting results. You can command your active party member to also interact with the world with their set unique ability. With each level up, you can power up abilities with specific effects. When adding a certain amount of friends to your social media, you unlock perks which are, again, combat advantage passives with various effects. You have your classic main quest and side quest tracking system as seen on other RPGs. Your world map is basically all of South Park, which surprisingly was a lot bigger than I expected. The map quest tracker and directions are brilliant and really make navigating town a breeze, and fast travel is done so by summoning Timmy and his valiant steed by interacting with the flag posts dotted around the place. I've likely missed a couple of other mechanics, but these are your main need to knows. The actual combat experience from Stick of Truth, in my opinion, is brilliant. Thanks to the real-time inputs and the amount of both familiar and unseen status effects, inflicting lots of statuses and dealing perfect blows consistently never gets old. Repetitive random encounters were never a chore, assigned targets to eliminate were always a pleasure, and boss fights really brought out that satisfying long game feeling. All thanks to the consistent reward factor experienced through perfect blocks, attacks and abilities. Fully upgraded abilities also felt very powerful due to the damage dealt and the 3 added passives affecting your enemies in various ways. The once a day summons are pretty funny and add plenty of humour to your encounters, and the way characters react to a lot of the abilities, magic and statuses are brilliant, especially Gross Out and Burning. Overall, a very consistent, fun gaming experience that definitely took me by surprise. So for the ultimate question, is it worth your time? If you're a fan of the South Park series and love a good turn-based RPG, this game is an absolute no-brainer. If however you're not familiar with South Park or turn-based RPGs, it's a very strong game to start you off. I'm going to give this game a 4.5 star or 89 out of 100. Considering it's a game based on an animated series, I'd consider it a complete success. Since the game is set in the quiet town of South Park, you would expect your exceptional gaming experience to be hindered by the small world map, limited character list, and the unlikely possibility of a gripping story. But you know what? I didn't even notice these limiting factors. The lore is of course humorous but surprisingly rich. The soundtracks are better than quite a few RPGs I've played in my time. The huge amount of bad language, explicit content, and inappropriate jokes are fucking brilliant. And yes, I will say it again, the real-time inputs have been executed absolutely brilliantly and really made the immersive and rewarding gaming experience. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more games I should be reviewing each week. By the time this video gets uploaded, the game is likely no longer part of a sale on Steam. If you are interested however, give it a month or two and check back. Hopefully it should be back on offer. But as always, all the best guys, take care.
They say that every time a princess crafts, another angel is born.